Virginia Sandford, popular Northwest personality, believes in living life to the fullest. Virginia speaks in an energetic, enthusiastic, and entertaining manner, drawing from her life experiences as a homemaker, mother, violinist, secretary, teacher, talk show host, writer, and speaker. She is a professional member of National Speakers Association. Virginia's presentation will be in 3 segments. First, on communication, entitled, I Like My Nose. Second, on life enjoyment, called Take Time to Swing on a Star. And last, on motivation, entitled, Is This All There Is? Virginia Sandford.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am so glad you're here today, because we're going to be talking about something that's very, very close to my heart, something that has changed my life, and that is assertive communication. You have a feature right in the middle of your face, right there. It's called a nose. I'd like to ask you a question. Do you like your nose? Let's see, the reaction I'm getting is sort of no. I've got one person that says yes, and most of you are a little bit on the no side. So you're like everybody else. Not most people do not like their nose. I don't like my nose. I didn't like my nose, but I do like my nose now. Now let me tell you something. I decided to learn how to be an assertive communicator, to be an assertive person. And I found out that the key to being assertive was to know yourself and accept yourself. I mean all parts of you, including my nose. So I decided I would like my nose. Now why didn't I like my nose? Well, it's sort of long and it's a little bit thinner than I like. I used to think I'd like to have a nose like Elizabeth Taylor, or maybe an aristocratic nose like Katharine Hepburn, and maybe a sort of a button nose like Lonnie Anderson. You know, recently I was talking at a seminar and I mentioned the same thing, and a gentleman in the back of the room says, "Does Lonnie Anderson have a nose?" Well, I decided I'm going to like my nose. And so how did I do this? With a sure-proof method, people. I looked in the mirror every day for 21 days. 21 days is a magic number, you know. Oh, lots of things can happen in 21 days. You can make a habit, you can break a habit in 21 days if you do it every single day. So I looked in the mirror every single day and I said, I like my nose. I didn't do it just once a day. I did it 2 and 3 times a day. And I said it with conviction. And do you know something? I like it. It goes with the rest of my face. It makes me look the way I do, and that is okay. I would like you to envision my face right here as a mirror. And I'm going to ask all of you to say, I like my nose. Let's say it. I like my nose. Well, you certainly didn't convince me, people. I don't think you would have convinced yourself either if you looked in the mirror. I want you to do it one more time. Now this time I want you to say it with conviction as if you have the most glorious nose in the world. Here, let's go again. I like my nose. All right. Congratulations to each one of you. Not only are you learning to accept yourself, but you have just used the 3 basic techniques of assertive communication. Number 1, you made eye contact. Number 2, you spoke loudly and firmly enough. And number 3, you stood up, well, in this case, you sat straight. And if you were standing, you would have stood straight. Those are the 3 basic communication skills. 3 basic techniques. That's all it takes. Plus, using the word I instead of you. How many of you have ever said here, you make me so mad? Come on, hasn't everyone? Sure, sure. We all do that. Now I ask you, let's not use that you, because you blames and it labels. Instead of you, let's change things to I. Let's make I statements. I feel angry when all these clothes are laying on the floor, if it might be your children. Please pick them up, and you will be surprised what happens, because when you use those you statements, you are giving power away to this other person that can control what you say, can control your emotions, can even control your behavior. Don't say you anymore. Let's try and say I. Okay. One thing that I have learned about becoming assertive is that it's sort of fun to try. I've had all sorts of interesting experiences. I haven't always been assertive. I used to be more of a passive communicator. When I was young and I had little children at home, my friends would sometimes call me on the phone. Now, I'm not a telephone person. I don't like to chat on the phone. Now, I'll meet anyone for coffee, or I'll meet you for a cocktail or whatever, and we'll just have a really good conversation, but not on the phone, just to get my business over with and off. And I have friends who like to call me, and they'd call and they'd chat and chat and chat. Now, I was a passive communicator at that time, and so I didn't say, hey, Penny, I really have to get off the phone now because there's some other things that I have to do. I'll see you later. Because I didn't want to be rude. So my friend would keep talking. And I had two little girls that were not angel-type children. And they, when I got on the telephone, would be so naughty. You know how you do. You take that telephone as far as you can, and they'd get right out of reach, and they'd be so naughty, and I'd be shaking my hand at them, wait till I get off this phone. Yes, Penny. And then I'd grab the dish towel and I'd snap at them and think, oh, well, you get off. So you see, I wasn't in control of the situation at all, but I did find out one thing. I had a door with a doorbell on it right next to my telephone, and I could open that door and I could ring the doorbell, and I didn't have to say anything. My friend would say, oh, you have company. I'll get off the phone. I'll talk to you later. Goodbye. And it worked, and I pulled that for so many times. I don't have to do that anymore. I use assertive communication. I can say what I think. Well, except for one person. My mother doesn't understand this assertiveness bit at all. so I still use the doorbell with my mother. Well, I'd like to tell you a couple of experiences about when I tried to be assertive. Incidentally, how did I learn to be assertive? I read a book. Went to the library, got a couple of books, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. I'd like to share with you today these two experiences of mine. One, I was marvelous. I was just fantastic. The other, I bombed. This first one, I was at the Seahawks game over in Seattle, football, I love football, with my man friend, and we were enjoying the game, and about 3 rows behind us, all of a sudden, we hear a radio blasting, and I mean loud. Very annoying. And I said to my friend, is that person supposed to have that radio blasting? My friend says, no, not at all. What do you think that was blasting on? The same game as we were watching. Men sort of like to do that. I have never figured that out. But there we were, and this was very annoying, and my friend says, no, they'll be all right, because I was suggesting that maybe we say something to him. He says, oh no, it'll be okay. The woman next to me was sort of fidgeting in her seat, and I said, does that radio bother you? She says, it sure does, and it bothers my husband too. I said, oh. And I looked around the back of me, and people are talking together. I wish that guy would turn off his radio. But nobody was saying anything to him but just giving him dirty looks. Well, you see, I had just read this assertiveness book, and I thought, well, here's an opportunity for me to try my skill. I will stand up and tell this fellow how I feel. So I stood up, and I'll never forget this feeling, because by the time I turned around and said, sir, I sort of wished I hadn't stood up. Everybody started looking at me, and my stomach was turning around, and I said to myself, I like my nose. You know, you can't give up in the middle of it. So I was in position, and I said, sir, and finally he says, you talking to me, lady? And I said, yes, I feel uncomfortable when your radio is blasting so loud. Please turn it down so that only you could hear it. And he looked at me and says, okay, lady, and he turned it down. I said, thank you, and as I turned, people were patting me on the shoulder saying, good for you, good for you, and I sat down and the woman next to me says, wow, you've got some nerve, that was marvelous. I said, thank you, I've never felt so good. My 6'3" man friend was cowered down in his seat, and he was all red-faced. Well, we still went out after that, but we didn't talk about that experience. But regardless, I was right. I was able to speak up assertively when somebody was infringing on my rights, and we usually do not do that. That's one thing assertiveness has done for me, and I feel good about it. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about when I really bombed. I will never forget this story, and you probably won't either. This is when my son Jim graduated from Fife High School about 5 years ago. 4 years ago, maybe. And at Fife High School, the tickets just aren't allotted out. So many for this person, so many. I mean, everybody goes. It's a small community. Everybody goes. They have it in the gymnasium. The seats are put down in the gym, and the risers are kept up, and lots of people come. I got there about 20 minutes before the graduation exercises started, and I was about with 7, 8 people. And I was talking away, and I was sitting on the last chair before the aisle, before the rises started. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder, obviously trying to get my attention. And I turned around, and here's this very nice-looking gentleman and a very nice-looking lady that I assumed to be his wife. And they said to me, "Hello, Virginia." And I said, "Hello. How are you?" "Well, I'm just fine. Haven't seen you for a long time." "No, it has been a long time." And we kept up these little pleasantries, and I'm thinking, who are these people? Haven't you ever done that?
Yes.
You know they look familiar, but who are they? It just wouldn't sink in. And mentally, I'm trying to put them in a spot. Do they live here? No. Have I worked with them? No. You know, all these things. Nothing clicked. So I could have turned my back, and I could have just got busy and talked to my friends and never known who they were. And I thought, no, I'm an assertive person. I can't do that. So I said to them, a very good assertive statement. I said, "You know, I know you people, but I just can't quite place you. Would you tell me your name?" When I said that, the woman's head snapped and looked at the man. And the man looked at me. And he looked at me. And he didn't say anything. Now, the book doesn't tell you what to do when the person doesn't say anything. I looked back at the woman, and she's still looking at the man, and the man is still looking at me. And he's looking. I thought, oh, I know those eyes. They look so familiar. But finally he spoke, and he says, "My name is Cal Sandford. I was married to you for 20 years, the father of your 3 children." It was my ex-husband. This is a true story. Did you ever want to just disappear? I sure did at that time. I was so embarrassed. I just couldn't get my act together at all. Now, if I'd kept my cool, kept my composure, I could have said this: "Well, Cal, you look marvelous. You've lost some weight. I've never seen you with a mustache. It's probably been about 7 years since I've seen you. And Joyce, I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. It's been quite a while. Jim will be so pleased you're here." That's such a nice assertive statement. What did I say? I says, "I remember you." This is a true story. And then I babbled. Did you ever babble where somehow this is not connected with this, and I'm saying, "I'm so glad you're here. Did you go to Reno? I heard you went to Reno. Did you win any money, Joyce? Did you win any money, Cal? Did you drive? Who drove?" And I'm going on, and somehow I'm thinking, you ask him his name. Finally, the graduation exercises started, and I had to shut up. Well, I didn't tell anybody about that for a long time. About 3 weeks later, I was laying in bed one night, and I got to giggling. I thought about it. It's the first time I ever thought it was funny. And I giggled, and I thought, that is the best put-down I've ever heard. And I'm not a put-down person. I wouldn't have even ever thought of such a thing. And I was able to share this story after that time. Being assertive, people, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some, but it's worth it. It really will change your life. Your communication will be so much more effective. And I'd like to conclude this by asking you all one more time to review your basic techniques. Number 1, eye contact. Number 2, speak loudly and firm enough. And 3, you sit up straight by looking at me and saying, "I like my nose." Let's hear it. I like my nose. Thank you very much. Very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so glad you're here today. I have an important question for you. If your banker called you and said, "I am going to deposit into your account $86,400 every single day. What would you say? All right, all of you are saying okay. And then what would your next question be? What's the catch? Absolutely. And your banker says there's no catch. It's just that you have to spend it all. If you don't, I take it back. You think you could spend it all? Sure, most of you could because, yeah. Because we'd probably buy ourselves, get out of debt first, probably buy ourselves a mansion, a yacht, a Porsche, maybe two, whatever we wanted to do, all those dreams. And then we'd start looking around the world and we would find that there's a lot of need for our money in the area of education and shelter and food for many people. We could really spend it if we knew that we can't have it, we can't save it, we've got to spend it. Well, don't go home and wait for the phone to ring. Because nobody's going to call. But what we do have is something much better than that. You have a time bank. You have 86,400 seconds from the time you get up at, say, 6 o'clock in the morning until the time you get up the next morning at 6 o'clock. And they're yours to spend the way you want to spend them. And the seconds, people, that you don't spend the way you really want to spend them, they are not retrievable. You cannot put them away in a savings bank and get them later. They are gone. Now, we've got to spend some time on personal pleasure, but we should be planning our personal pleasure like we plan our vocation, and not just come home from work, turn on the TV set, and the TV set goes on at night, and maybe you haven't done anything but watch TV. However, if that's what you plan to do, that is fine, that's good. But maybe the TV really sort of gets in the way of us doing a lot of things that we really want to do to spend our life. I don't know about you, but when I'm 70, 80 years old, I don't want to tell you about all the TV episodes I've seen and all the game shows I've watched. I'd sort of like to think about some of the things I've accomplished, some of the fun that I have really had with my friends and going places and doing things. Watch that TV. It can get you hooked. On Thursday nights, The Cosby Show comes on. Now, that's my special night, and what I do is plan it. 8 to 9, Cosby Show, and then Family Ties. I think that Michael J. Fox is just really fun to watch. That is my time. I really get annoyed if anyone calls me on the telephone during that time because I plan it. I like it. Now, after that, there's another show that's called Cheers. So I have to make up my mind. Do I want to take another half an hour and watch Cheers, and then after that, Night Court's on. It's really good TV night. Now, sometimes, yes, I'll watch all 4 shows because that's what I plan to do. But other times, I just have to simply say, no, I'm only going to watch these 2 because there's other things that I'd rather be doing. But you see, if I don't force myself off my Davenport to get over to that TV before that Cheers comes on, after the first 2 minutes, I'm hooked. And I'm back down again. We have to watch that TV. Do you really want to watch as much as you may be doing? If you do, that's fine. Have any of you ever said, one of these days I'm going to do such and such? Yes, yes, I think we've all said that. And then in 6 months later, we're saying the same thing. One of these days I'm going to do that. Another 6 months or a year, and we still haven't done those things that we really want to do because we don't plan them. We don't plan the activity. You see, we can talk about doing anything that we want to do, but unless we plan, we got to pick up the phone, we have to find out some information. Plan, when are we going to do it? Do any of you carry appointment books around with you? Sure, most of you do, and it's really nice. Why don't you plan your pleasure right in that book instead of just your professional life? Say you have to make a phone call to find out about a certain trip that you've been interested to take. Put that down. Put your activity down right in your appointment book. One of these days, I have said that so many times about going river rafting. I would say it all the time, and my friends would get very tired of my saying, one of these days I'm going to go river rafting. Finally, my friend Bonnie, who's in the travel world anyhow, made some arrangements. She called me up one day. She's a week from Sunday. We are going river rafting. 6 of us are going, and we're going to go in my van, and I'm going to pick you up at 6:30 in the morning. This is what you wear, and this is how much it will cost. She had to make the arrangements because I had been saying this for so long. We did go. We had a great time, all of us. It was really fun. I want to go air ballooning one of these days, and I have to make the arrangements to do it. I have twice. I can honestly say the weather was not good and we could not go. But that's something that I really want to do. That means I've got to put it down in my book and then go with it. That's one of the things we can do, is to remember what we really want to do and then plan. Another thing to give us personal pleasure is to spend a little money, and I mean a little, like maybe $2 or $3 a week. Now, you all say, gosh, I already spend money on myself, but this is special. And then you're going to say, what can you do with $2 or $3? You know, you can do a lot of things with $2 or $3, and if it is just yours to spend exactly the way you want it, that will give you some personal pleasure, it's fun. It's a little type of a, sort of like a game. Can any of you think about something that you would spend for $2 or $3 that would give you personal pleasure?
Flower.
A flower, absolutely. I did that the other day. I came back from a class that I was teaching and went by this greenhouse, and I thought, I would like to have a little plant in my house right now in February. We could use that. And I stopped and bought myself a little blooming azalea, and I just love it. It makes me feel good, very good. What's another thing we could spend a couple dollars on?
Book.
A book, very inexpensive paperback book, yes. How about, do you ever go to the store to buy your birthday cards, anniversary cards? I call those duty cards. They're sort of our duty to send them. And we send them, we like to send them, but if we don't send any, you don't get any back. But they're fun to do. But did you ever send a card for no reason at all? Just to say, hey, I care, I'm thinking about you. How does it make you feel? It really does. And to receive one, all of a sudden out of the blue, somebody's saying, hey, I care about you. Hello, how are you? I haven't seen you for a long time. It's one of the things that you can do for a very little money. I did that once. When my oldest daughter had her first baby, she had a colicky baby. And I'm telling you, that baby was crying day, and it was her very first, day and night, and she was down with the baby blues, feeling so bad. My other daughter was in school, and she was sending herself through college. I couldn't help her at that time. And she was having some financial difficulties. I was at the store buying duty cards, and I found two little, have you ever seen these book cards? You sort of look through them, and one was something about a daughter, and the other what a daughter means to me. One seemed to fit Sue, and the other seemed to fit Kay, and I bought those books. It cost me $1 a piece. And I sent them to each of my daughters. They lived out of town, and all I put in them was, I love you, Mom. Do you know those girls still have those books? And do you know I got a long-distance call from them when they received them and said, oh, Mom, this is so nice. It just tells me that you are thinking about me. You're with me. It's such a little thing, and it gives so much pleasure. Why don't I do that more often? Another thing you can spend a couple dollars on, and this may seem sort of silly to you, but I like papayas. Nobody else in the family eats papayas. They cost almost $2 a piece. I feel a little guilty ever buying a papaya just for me. But now you see, I have my $2 a week that I go out and I can buy a papaya, and I savor every bite because this is just a special little money. Can you think of anything else that you could spend a couple of dollars on that would be fun for you and give you personal pleasure?
Can't think of a thing.
You can't think of a thing. How about
a pair of earrings?
A pair of earrings? How about, very good, how about a
ticket.
A what?
A ticket for the lotto.
The lottery ticket, if that gives you pleasure, that's great, fantastic. How about maybe a bag of peanuts, go to the zoo? That's sort of fun. Pardon?
Rent a movie.
Rent a movie. Go to even the matinee only costs a couple of dollars, I think, now. That's something else. Anything else that you can think of that you could spend your $2, $3 on a week? Once you get in the habit of that, it becomes a little game. Just stick it in one sort of part in your purse or pocket and say, oh boy, this is my pleasure. A magazine, a little plant, many things that you can do. Take somebody for coffee. Give the $1 or $2 away to somebody. That is really fun to do. That's just spending a little money. One thing that you can get a lot of personal pleasure by, and it's something that we can all do, is quit taking ourselves so seriously. Okay. one thing that has, I wanted to tell you about the child that is in you. You see, we all have a lot of child in us yet. And when we were children, remember how relaxed we were? Did we take ourselves so seriously as we do now? I don't know what happens to us. As we grow and we get older, we take on responsibility and we lose all that spontaneity, that's fun of being a child. Laugh. This is one of the things you can do is laugh, and big belly laughs. You say, well, I laugh now, but the big belly laughs. Do you know what they're doing in hospitals today, both mental hospital and physical hospitals? They're rolling the patients on wheelchairs any way they can get them in front of the old I Love Lucy series and the Dick Van Dykes, and they're showing these films, and these people are laughing. I mean, big belly laughs. And they are doing marvelously well. You've heard about that too. Yes, I think that is really something, laughing. Another thing you can do is be a little crazy. Be outrageous. It's okay to be outrageous and silly. When I was teaching full-time, one of my responsibilities was to help my students get a job, a position. And when they got to the end of their course, then they would go out in interviews, and they were allowed to use our telephone number that we had in the room so that they could leave that number in case they got the job. When the telephone, they didn't use it for any other reason. When the telephone rang, and I said, Betty, this is for you, and she had been recently out on an interview, we all knew that either Betty got the job or she didn't. So Betty would come up and she'd say, hello, this is Betty. And by this time, you know, we're very close in these schools. By this time, it's very quiet in there. And then pretty soon, I did. And when she turned around, her face beamed and everybody else's did. And we were really thrilled for her because it gave every student hope. Not only were they thrilled for Betty, but it gave them hope. Oh, yes, I'm going to get a job too. It was very nice. After she got off the phone, what happened? We all ran up and we hugged and said, congratulations, Betty. It was really exciting for all of us. One day, one of my students got this job, and she says, I did, and I was so elated because this is one student that I thought I might have a little bit difficulty placing. And when she got off the phone, I broke out in song and dance. Betty got a job, and I was just dancing up there, and everybody was laughing, and yes, it was a silly thing to do. If my boss had walked by and saw me dancing, and he probably thought, what is she doing? How is she teaching this class? However, do you know, every time after that, one of my students got a job, they'd say, Mrs. Sandford, aren't you going to dance for me? And I danced for them every single time. That's something. Be outrageous. Be funny. Fantasize. Dream. It's okay to dream and fantasize. Remember as a child, did you ever play Let's Pretend? All the time, let's pretend. You be this, you be that. You be the cops, I'll be the robbers. All sorts of fantasies. It's okay to do that, people. In fact, if you can remember what you dreamed about, what you fantasized about as a child, it might give you a clue as to something that you might want to do today. Let me tell you about my experience. I was programmed, number one, to be a concert violinist. At the age of 5, I started taking lessons. And I didn't just practice like most people practice. I practiced an hour when I was 5, an hour and a half when I was 7. In the summers, every year, it was 4 hours that I practiced every single day. Do you think I had Christmas Day off? No, I practiced Christmas Day. That was the only thing that bothered me. I thought I should have Christmas Day off. I practiced then too. I was programmed to be a concert violinist, and that has been my major. However, when I was about 12 years old, I saw a typewriter, and I thought, gosh, I'd like to type. You know, my mother went around town paying bills. I don't know if they had checking accounts in those times, but she always went and paid them by cash. I went with her sometimes, and every time there would be a receptionist and a telephone and somebody typing, and I thought, gosh, that'd be neat to learn how to type. I want to do that. So when I was 12 years old, I asked for Christmas for a typewriter. My folks were not wealthy. They sacrificed a great deal to give us, my brothers and myself, music lessons. But they managed to get me a typewriter, even though they had no idea what I would want one for. They got the typewriter, and it only has 4 serial numbers, so it was a used one then. I still have it. And I taught myself the keyboard, and I did eventually become a secretary at one time in my life. But there was something else I used to fantasize about. My father was a machinist, and he was a member of the BARE, which is the Brotherhoods of American Railroad Employees, and every bi-monthly he would receive a magazine, and it would be a shiny white magazine. And on the front of it would be a motivational message in bold black print. I can feel that magazine now. I can see that message right there. Do you know what I did? I'd memorize those. They were only 2 or 3 sentences. I would memorize those. Nobody knows this in my family. When nobody was around, I'd go up and look in the mirror. And honest to gosh, this is the truth. Look in the mirror and I'd recite those motivational messages in the mirror as if I had a big audience there. You see, I wanted to do what I'm doing today all my life. I just didn't know it. Remember what you dreamed about as a child. I was telling somebody about this lately, and they used to play with the airplanes. That's all they could think of. And although that was not their profession as they grew up, that was one thing that this fellow said it was important to him, was to get his pilot's license. There are many things you can do to give you personal pleasure. Why is it important? It's important because it will improve your professional performance as well as allowing you to really enjoy your life. What I call this is swinging on a star. I ask you, every one of you, please take time to swing on your star. Thank you very much. My mother had just had her 70th birthday. We had a very good time. She was at my house just a few days later and she says, "Is this it? Is this all there is?" And she was very serious. And she was angry, I could tell. And I said, "Mother, what are you talking about?" "To life," she says. "Is this all there is to life? I'm 70 years old." I was so surprised to hear my mother saying that. I said, "Mother, I thought you had a great life. You've had 3 children. None of us have given you too much trouble. You have a home. You have a husband who loves you. You've traveled some. You've worked some. You have grandchildren. What more do you want?" She says, "I know all that, Virginia, but it's not enough. There are so many things I wished I'd done and I didn't." And I said, "Mother, like what?" She says, "Do you remember before I remarried, I wanted to buy that big house up by the college, and I wanted to board students while they went to college." She says, "You know I love young people, and you know I love to cook. I know I could have done that." I said, "Mother, I do remember that. Why didn't you do that?" She says, "Because I got up to signing the last papers, and I was afraid to sign them because I was afraid I couldn't do it." And she says, "Oh, Virginia, I wish I had." She mentioned several other things that she wished she had done. And I said, "Mother, I feel so bad, but you're only 70. That does not mean that's the end of the world. You have lots of time yet." And I told her about this older woman that I had heard of that opened up a store at the age of 94 in the Midwest, and it was sort of a museum type store, but it was a store. And the media heard about this and they went to interview her. The reporter said to her, "Why at this age are you opening up a store?" And she said, "Because I never thought of it before." I love that answer, because certainly age was not stopping her from doing anything that she wanted to do. But you see, it's your attitude, how you think and how you feel. And it's your attitude about life. It's your attitude about your job. Let's talk about your job for just a moment. How do you feel about your job? Do you feel enthusiastic, like you did when you first started? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel that retirement sounds pretty good? Well, comfortable, of course, is where we want to feel, as long as we do not feel too comfortable. Because when you are comfortable at something, what happens? You're just sort of coasting and you're not feeling, Very good. You're in a rut, aren't you? You're just not getting the energy back in it. And you're sort of coasting. And people, when you coast, how many of you ride a bike in here? Probably all of you, yes. When you ride a bike, how long can you coast before you have to put some energy before you fall over? Not too far. You've got to put energy back into that coasting. Can you coast this way? No. No. So where you're going is coasting downhill. I would like to talk about the reason my mother did not sign those final papers. Because she was afraid, fear of failure. People, failure is one of the best tools for growth that we have. Nothing would have been invented unless these inventors failed and failed and failed, because they learned from their failures and then they kept going. Failure is okay. Heavens, we don't start out to try to be a failure, but when we fail, it's something we learn. And I want to share with you today an experience where I failed. It's not the only time I failed. I have failed plenty. But let me tell you about one experience. And this is when I was teaching. A job opportunity came available. I had been teaching for 4 years, excuse me, and the department head job became available. I was urged by both my fellow teachers and administration to apply for this job. And I thought, well, is that where I really want to go? Well, it seems like the logical step. I guess I should. I've been teaching for 4 years now. And so I said, yeah, I guess I'll apply for it. 16 other people did too. I was one of the lucky ones. 2 of us were left after a series of interviews. It was going to be my job or my candidate. So I took a look at the candidate and thought, oh my goodness, she has none of these great qualifications that I have. I am much better qualified for this job. Now, I didn't say that to anybody, but other people came up and said, oh, Virginia, this is a shoo-in. You're so much better qualified. You've got this job. The teachers would say, we'll work really well together. Everything will be just fine when you get this job. I was so sure that I was going to get this job. It came back down to the last interview, and this is with the 3 top administrators of the school. It was going to be a half-an-hour interview. They were going to ask me 6 questions. They were going to take the other candidate and ask her 6 questions. She was going to go first for a half an hour. I dressed appropriately, navy blue suit, white blouse, the navy blue pumps, everything was right. I was prepared. And it was my turn for my interview, finally. And I went in, and they asked me these 6 questions, and was I great? I came out, have you ever come out of this interview thinking, wow, I was really sensational, I know I've got that job. Every question I knew, and I just answered it so well. And as I went back, I was still teaching at the time, as I went back up to my room to teach, the teachers popped out of their rooms and said, how'd the interview go? How did it go? Great, absolutely great. So I went back, and I was told that I would hear that morning whether I got the job or not. Well, the morning went by, and I didn't hear a thing. I went to lunch and came back, and finally about 1:30 in the afternoon, I got the call to come down to the personnel office. Aha, this is it, I thought. I should have known the personnel office, they're going to tell me no, but I didn't think of that. I went down to the personnel office to hear that I got that job, and the person says to me, you know, your qualifications are so good that we've been debating all morning which way to go. And we finally decided to give it to the other person. I was absolutely shocked, and I was hurt. And of course I heard the routine of, well, there are other jobs available, et cetera, and then things will be coming up. No, that was all right, thank you very much, and I went back. Now, as I went back, I'm feeling really bad. I really wanted to cry, but you can't do that sometimes. So I went back and think, oh my goodness, how can I get through the rest of this day? As I was going, the teachers were popping out of their rooms and saying, did you get it? Did you get it? No, I didn't get it. And I felt like I was letting them down when they say, you didn't get it. I went back into class and I thought, I have got to turn this situation into a positive one right now. So I told my class that I had applied for this job. They did not know. And I told them, I said, right now I am hurting very much because I did not get this job. And I'm sharing this with you right now while I'm hurting, because you are all going to experience the same feeling sometime in your life. And it isn't fun, but we can get through it. And I'll talk to you more about it after the weekend. It was on a Friday. My students, the loyal, they were marvelous. They were so angry at that administration for not giving me that job. At 3 o'clock was the end of the day where my students left. I was supposed to stay till 4. That day I left at 3. I got in my car and I thought, I am not going to cry until I get home. I'm not going to cry till I got home. By the time I was halfway out of the campus, the tears were starting. Now 3 miles, it took me 3 miles to get to the freeway. By this time I wasn't crying anymore. I was sobbing. I don't know how I ever got home. I was just sobbing. Finally I got home. I parked my car in the carport, and my son comes out of the house and he says, Mom, did you get the job? And I said, no. I didn't get it. You didn't get it? I let another person down, I felt. I went and cried for a little while, and then my man friend comes with a bottle of champagne to celebrate my new job. And I says, I didn't get it. You didn't get it. I let another person down. I cried most of Friday night. On Saturday, a couple of teachers called and said, oh, you were robbed. And, oh, no, I wasn't. I'm sure they had some reason for picking the other person. I'd get off the phone, I sure was robbed, and then I would go and cry some more. And I just had the best time feeling sorry for myself. The funny part of it was, on Sunday morning, I woke up. I felt so good. And I thought, what's the matter here? I'm supposed to feel terrible. I felt so good. I remember this morning so distinctly, because I got out of bed and I remember putting my robe on and sort of walking out into the front room thinking, why do I feel so good? It was just like a weight that was lifted off my back. And I sat down in the chair and picked up a book. It happened to be See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. My house is full of motivational books. And I'm looking down at this book in wonderment. Why am I feeling so good? And honest, this is a true story. I looked at the page that it sort of automatically turned to, and it said, if you did not get something that you really wanted, you should feel bad. But you will not continue to stay bad, feeling bad, because you will start to learn from this experience. And you see, that's what was happening. I was over that part of feeling bad. Now I was going to learn. And I planned my action. Number one, I had to see the head honcho of that school and find out why I did not get that job. Monday morning, I came into my room and I said, hi, students. They're still mad. They said, what are you smiling about? And they're still like, I said, hey, it's going to be okay. I'm going to find out why, and I'm going to share with you. I made an appointment to see the head administrator. And I says, I only need 5 minutes. And I did get one at 1 o'clock that day. And at 1 o'clock I walked in and he says, come in, Virginia, what did you want to see me about? As if he didn't know. And I says, I need to know why I didn't get that job. And he says, Virginia, I can tell you, your goals are wishy-washy. He says, I don't know how many times I tried in so many different ways to get you to tell me that this was what you wanted, this job, and where were you going from there? But he says, you could not tell me. Your goals are wishy-washy. And he says, every other qualification is A, number one. I want a goal-oriented person in this position. And I says, you are right. They are. And I went back to my class and I shared that with them, and believe me, my goals are not wishy-washy anymore. 2 years. Of course, how could I say I wanted the job? I really didn't want the job in the first place. What I wanted is to go in the direction that I am in now. And 2 years from then, I quit my teaching job and started my own business, and that's what I am doing today. My life is exciting, ladies and gentlemen. It may not be exciting to anyone else, and that doesn't matter, but I am doing what I want to do and having just a great time. I ask you to think about this. When you are 70 years old, people, are you going to say, is this all there is to life? It's your choice. You must make it now. In conclusion, I just want to say thank you for being here today. You have been a grand audience. Thank you. This was
great.
fun. That was okay.
wonderful.
Oh, thank you very
good.
much. I'm
Very
glad to
good.
see it.
I
It was
just want
fun
to say how
hear.
much I enjoyed that.
Oh,
That was really
thank
lovely.
you. You're such a nice person. It's been fun.
Oh, friend, it
yes.
was good, and you motivated me.
Oh,
In fact, you
That's great. That's good.
Very good,
Oh,
very interesting.
thank
I'm
you,
going to tell
Alfred.
others about your class.
Well, good. Thank you very much. Good. I'm glad.
learned something.
This concludes Virginia Sandford's presentation. The three 15-minute talks you have just heard are miniature versions of 30 to 60-minute presentations. Virginia Sandford is also well known as a trainer and seminar leader specializing in self-esteem building and professional development. To contact Virginia, write Virginia Sandford and Associates, 811 62nd Avenue Northeast, Tacoma, Washington, 98422. Or call area code 206-927-1830.